He stole my code, my startup, even my name. The world crowned him a genius, while I vanished without a trace. But what he didn't know, I was still watching. And I was going to erase everything he ever built. This is the story of how I destroyed him, bit by bit. Before you hear my story, tap subscribe and drop a comment if you've ever been silenced or underestimated. They say the truth always finds its way to the surface. But they never tell you what it feels like when someone steals your truth and wears it like a crown. My name is Alara Voss, and I was the architect of a revolution, a decentralized privacy protocol that could have made me a legend in cybersecurity. But when the cameras flashed and the tech world roared with applause, it wasn't my name on their lips. It was Jasper Cain's. Charismatic. Brilliant. A born speaker. And a liar. He smiled like he wrote poetry in Python and danced with quantum strings. But behind that Harvard dropout charm and Steve Jobs swagger, Jasper was a scavenger. He didn't build, he borrowed. He didn't invent, he absorbed. And when he looked at me, I thought I saw admiration. But it was hunger. We met in a cramped co-working space off Market Street, back when code was caffeine and our furniture was milk crates. I remember the night I sketched Spectra on the whiteboard for the first time, an encrypted mesh protocol that could reroute data through ghost nodes, making surveillance nearly impossible. His eyes lit up. You realize this could change the world, right? I'm counting on it, I said. What I didn't know then was he was counting on me. For the next 6 months, I worked like a possessed machine, sleepless nights, bleeding fingers, a world reduced to lines of code. He brought me coffee. Laughed at my bug logs. He said, "We're in this together." And I believed him. Until the pitch deck I'd never seen hit TechCrunch. Until the GitHub repo I'd made private appeared under his name. Until the funding round closed at 20 million, and I wasn't even mentioned. No credit. No call. No explanation. Just a press photo of Jasper standing beside my code in a clean black turtleneck and a caption that read, "The visionary behind Spectra." That's when something inside me went very, very still. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I saved every article. Downloaded every press release. Watched every interview. And then, I vanished. I faked the data trail first. A string of credit card cancellations. An apartment lease terminated. Flight searches to Seoul, then Berlin, then nowhere. I closed every social account, one by one. Scrubbed metadata, altered IPs, used burner nodes to mimic behavior from 5 different cities. I erased myself. But not before setting the trap. I left one breadcrumb, a final GitHub commit under our old shared alias, buried deep in the Spectra structure. Just a line of code with a tiny note in the comments. Original ghost. Alara. He'd see it eventually. I needed him to know I was watching. Because I wasn't gone. I was behind every screen now. And I was going to dismantle him. Piece by lying piece. I started with his inbox. He used the same admin password everywhere, hubristic fool. The moment I cracked his email, it was like peering into the private thoughts of a celebrity no one realized was rotten. Dozens of NDA violations. Screenshots of other people's prototypes. Confidential investor decks forwarded from competitors. He hadn't just stolen from me, he'd made a career of it. Next came the bank accounts. I mirrored his transactions for 2 weeks, quietly learning the rhythm of his financial life. Then, I slowed the faucet. Little hiccups. Two-factor fails. Unexpected login attempts. He started to panic. He even tweeted, "Anyone else's accounts acting up lately? Feeling like my tech karma's biting me." Cute. But this wasn't karma. This was me. And I was just getting started. The final crack came one rainy night when I accessed a call recording from an investor briefing. Jasper was smooth, even over audio. "We believe Spectra represents a new paradigm in secure communication. Something I envisioned after a late-night breakthrough." I played that line over and over until it bored into my skull. My voice should have been there. He was reciting my thoughts like a bedtime story. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt resolve. If he could take my voice, I would take his face. I used a deepfake generation tool I'd refined months before, meant to help whistleblowers speak anonymously. I layered his voice, his gestures, his cadence, into a fake press leak. We've used stolen code from multiple developers. Spectra isn't secure. It was built on lies. Then I set it loose. One anonymous upload. A push to darknet forums. And a quiet nudge to a certain journalist at Wired. It spread like fire. Within 48 hours, the Spectra subreddit was a minefield. Investors were demanding audits. Users were deleting apps. Jasper issued a statement calling it a hoax. But his hands trembled at the podium. Because only one person could have known the phrase ghost nodes. And he hadn't used those words publicly. Not once. Only I had. The shadows were tightening around him. And he was starting to realize. He hadn't just stolen from a coder. He'd betrayed a ghost. And ghosts don't forgive. They haunt. They say when a system is compromised, the breach doesn't begin with brute force, it begins with trust. A forgotten port. An overlooked line of code. A misplaced key. That's what Jasper never understood. He thought betrayal was a single act. A one-time knife in the back. But betrayal is quieter than that. It seeps in. And it remembers everything. I watched his life unravel in slow motion. He tried to deny the deepfake leak. Held emergency calls with his PR team. Spun a desperate narrative about malicious actors and jealous competitors. And for a moment, I wondered if people would believe him. But reputation, like code, is fragile. One exploit is all it takes. And the cracks were spreading. Still, I needed more than digital chaos. More than financial stutters or press scandals. I needed to cut deeper. Because what Jasper did to me wasn't just theft. It was erasure. He had taken my work, my identity, my voice, and rewritten me as a footnote in his origin story. So I started mapping the system he valued most. His relationships. The first breach was Maya. She wasn't just Jasper's girlfriend, she'd been our friend. Back in the early days, when Spectra was still an idea scribbled on whiteboards and takeout boxes, Maya had brought us ramen at 2 a.m. She was quiet, smart, loyal. UX designer turned product strategist. And once, briefly, my roommate. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. So when I hijacked her Slack credentials from a beta access email and slipped into her work chat under an alias, I was careful. I watched. Listened. Waited. She messaged Jasper in short, clipped sentences. Delayed replies. A ... that never turned into text. Then one message changed everything. Maya, Allura wrote that protocol, didn't she? I stopped breathing. Jasper, not this again. Maya, I was there, Jay, I saw her build it. You added polish. You didn't invent it. Jasper, why are you bringing this up now? Maya, because whoever leaked that video knew about the ghost nodes. She remembered. And she was doubting him. A week later, Maya posted a Medium article about women in tech and the systemic theft of intellectual labor. She didn't name me. But she didn't have to. It began with a quote. If you're quiet, they think you're empty. Allura Voss. That was my phrase. From the notebook I left behind. She hadn't forgotten after all. I watched the likes roll in. And I realized I had a mirror inside the castle. Next was Caleb, our old back-end dev, now a ghost himself. After Spectre's funding round, he'd vanished. Rumor had it Jasper forced him out. I found his private repo buried on a server in Lithuania, shielded behind a firewall of scripts and misdirection. He hadn't stopped building. His project was called Redroot. A forked protocol. Same foundation. But cleaner. Stronger. Untraceable. It was Spectre's spiritual successor. And when I decrypted the footer, I found 3 words. For Allura. Always. That night, I reached out to him through an anonymous relay. He responded in 2 minutes. Took you long enough. I stared at the blinking cursor. You knew I was alive? I knew you wouldn't stay erased. We started planning. Caleb became my silent partner, my backdoor. He gave me real-time access to Jasper's home server. His smart locks. His encrypted note-taking app. I watched as Jasper frantically tried to clean up his paper trail, deleting emails, wiping old branches of code, encrypting everything 3 times over. But it was too late. I already had root access. To his machines. To his life. To him. The emotional betrayal came into focus piece by piece. Old video calls archived in Spectre's DevOps folder. Footage of Jasper downplaying my involvement during investor meetings, even as I coded beside him on screen. Recordings of Maya asking where I'd gone, and Jasper saying I'd had a breakdown. But the worst? A voice memo dated 2 weeks before the funding round. Jasper talking to an unknown contact. She's brilliant, but she's a recluse. No charisma. No pitch presence. She's the kind of genius you bury under the brand. We let her code in peace, then step over her when it's time for market. He knew what he was doing. He'd planned it. He'd never intended to share the stage. And I had loved him once. Platonically. Quietly. With admiration. I let him in. I let him rewrite me. And now I was rewriting him. I launched the next phase, a series of targeted drops. Screenshots of his messages admitting to source code theft, posted anonymously to developer forums. A leaked PDF of Spectre's first prototype, timestamped and authored by me. A voice-altered podcast appearance on an underground tech whistleblower show, where a former co-founder laid bare the truth of Spectre's creation. The public started connecting the dots. His investors began to pull out. His face disappeared from the startup darlings circuit. But what I didn't expect was this. Spectre wasn't the only thing he stole. Caleb found it buried in Jasper's off-grid drive. A document labeled P3RSEUS. Encrypted. Government stamped. Redacted headers. We decrypted it over 3 nights. And what we found made my blood run cold. Spectra wasn't just a privacy protocol. Jasper had been approached, months ago, by a shadowy federal contractor. They wanted to integrate Spectra into civilian surveillance tools. What we'd built to protect the public was being weaponized to monitor it. And he agreed. In exchange for complete immunity and $2.5 million in crypto routed through a shell NGO. That's why he buried me. That's why he scrubbed my name from the records. He didn't just steal my code. He sold my soul. Now the stakes were different. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclamation. Of Spectra. Of truth. Of the name Alara Voss. But I couldn't just out him. If I took him down without exposing the contract, the project would live on, without either of us. So I crafted one last operation. I called it Null Root. A full purge of Jasper's identity, from credentials to certificates to contracts. But more than that, I would force Spectra to crash from the inside. And leak everything. All the names. All the payments. All the lies. But I'd need help. I'd need Maya. There comes a moment in every system when the root becomes corrupted. When trust becomes a threat. When truth becomes dangerous. And the only way forward is to delete everything. Maya met me in the alley behind a bookstore in the Mission District. She wore a hoodie like armor, eyes darting, fingers tied around a canvas bag. She didn't hug me. Just stared at my face like she couldn't decide whether to cry or slap me. I thought you were dead, she said. I was. We went upstairs, into the dusty loft above the shop, where Caleb had set up a ghost workstation, off-grid, analog fallback, no internet. Just wires, whiteboards, and paranoia. The 3 of us hadn't been in the same room in nearly 2 years. We didn't waste time on nostalgia. Caleb pulled up a schematic on the board, a map of the Perseus network. A global surveillance system piggybacking on Spectra's open-source credibility. Governments across 3 continents had signed early access contracts. The protocol was being forked, modified, and silently deployed under names like Sentinel and Clarion. Spectra is no longer just Jasper's product, Caleb said. It's a weapon. And he's protected, Maya added. They've buried him under NDAs and shell core. Exposing him won't kill the project. I looked at the final node. Root Access Server, Iceland. A clean data center. Climate-cooled. Disconnected from U.S. jurisdiction. It was Spectra's fail-safe. If we take out that root server, I said, we kill the whole network. But it'll erase everything, Caleb warned. Spectra. Red root. Even your original code. I stared at the terminal in silence. Maybe that's what has to happen. We launched Null Root in phases. Phase 1, Deception. Maya posed as a new product lead at a dummy startup, Nebula site. We baited Jasper with a pitch deck claiming to have built a next-gen routing protocol stronger than Spectra. We dangled the one thing he couldn't resist, competition. He bit. We scheduled a Zoom meeting, fake background, disguised IP, deepfake avatar. I watched in real time as he leaned forward, intrigued. Arrogant. Looks solid, he said. But your encryption structure looks familiar. He smiled. That smile. God, how I hated it. You didn't invent ghost routing, he said to the avatar. Someone else did. I watched my own voice reply through the avatar. I know. She's not dead. The flicker of fear in his eyes almost made the years worth it. Phase 2, Injection. Caleb deployed a silent payload during the meeting, a custom logic bomb embedded in the protocol preview file. As soon as Jasper opened it, the malware burrowed into his endpoint. It gave us access to his Perseus credentials. The root key. The skeleton key. His empire, in our hands. Phase 3, Collapse. We had one shot. One moment. The root server in Iceland updated nightly at 3:17 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. We hijacked the update window. Caleb ran a live injection, replacing the server's update script with our own. Instead of pushing a new build of Spectra, it triggered a recursive deletion script. File by file. Node by node. The logs blinked, and then, the screen went black. The news broke 3 days later. Spectra's global outage triggered a digital panic. Users across 19 countries lost access to encrypted messaging apps. Tech outlets scrambled for answers. Jasper Kane went silent. Then the leak dropped. Screenshots. Contracts. Voice memos. Source code histories. The entire Perseus deal. Maya pushed it all through a whistleblower platform tied to 3 major outlets. Caleb mirrored it through the dark web. Within 24 hours, the headlines screamed. National surveillance built on stolen code. The ghost of Alara Voss. Spectra's collapse sparks global inquiry. And Jasper? He was seen boarding a private plane to Dubai. He didn't look victorious. He looked hollow. I stood on the cliffs at Land's End the night after the system collapsed. The ocean roared below me, dark and endless. Maya stood beside me. Caleb behind us, silent. It's done, she said. But I didn't answer. Because in the silence, something ached. I had my revenge. The world knew what he'd done. My name, Alara Voss, was back in the mouths of the people who once ignored me. But my code was gone. The thing I'd built from midnight silence and caffeine-fueled madness. Erased. And I had no version control left. All I had was memory. I could rebuild, I whispered. You shouldn't have to, Maya said. They'll come to you now. No, I said. I don't want them to. 6 months later, I lived in a quiet town with no cameras. No LinkedIn. No GitHub. Just a small workshop where I repaired broken radios and taught local girls how to solder circuits. Sometimes they asked about the Spectra story. I never answered. The world could argue over it forever. Whether I was a villain. Or a hero. A ghost. Or a god. But I knew the truth. I wasn't erased anymore. I had erased him. And in doing so, I had finally written my own ending. Tell me below, have you ever turned pain into purpose? If you felt that revenge burn slow and cold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more real-life revenge stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being part of this healing. Until next time. Stay steady. Stay kind.